Everyone thought old widow Helen was just a lonely old lady with too many cats and one spoiled poodle. But when her greedy family started circling like vultures, fighting over her will before she was even dead, Helen hatched a plan so deliciously petty it made headlines. Spoiler alert, the dog got it all. In the quiet town of Ashbury Pines, Helen Cartwright was a legend. Not because she had done anything particularly scandalous yet, but because at 82 she still drove her cherry red convertible, wore red lipstick every day, and walked her beloved toy poodle Muffin in a pearl-studded collar. Her late husband, George Cartwright, had left her a sizable estate, a cozy 3-bedroom home, a classic art collection, and stocks that comfortably kept her in silk pajamas and imported French cheese. She lived alone, well with Muffin, and saw her grandchildren less than she'd see a solar eclipse. Her kids, Cheryl and Dennis, called only on birthdays. Yet somehow, when she broke her ankle and was briefly hospitalized, the entire Cartwright clan showed up like moths to an inheritance-shaped flame. And that's when the drama began. The hospital rooms smelled like antiseptic and stale pudding, and Helen was surrounded by more flowers than she'd seen at her own wedding. Orchids from Cheryl, a fruit basket from Dennis, and a suspiciously expensive watch from her teenage grandson Jason, who hadn't visited since the iPad incident of 2019. "You really shouldn't have," Helen said dryly, eyeing the gifts like a queen inspecting tributes. "We were so worried, Mom," Cheryl cooed, brushing imaginary dust off Helen's pillow. "When we heard about the fall, we just rushed over." Helen raised an eyebrow. "It happened 3 days ago." Dennis laughed nervously. "Well, it took some time to, rearrange things. Jason had basketball, and Cheryl had a nail appointment." Jason was scrolling on his phone. Helen narrowed her eyes. "Jason, are you filming a TikTok in my hospital bed?" "Just showing my followers the hustle. Hospital vibes, #grateful." If Helen had any doubts before, they were gone now. They weren't here for her, they were here for her stuff. Muffin, sitting loyally beside her in a carrier, let out a low growl. Helen smiled. Her dog had better instincts than the whole family combined. "You know," Cheryl said, placing a fake sympathetic hand on Helen's wrist, "we've just been thinking lately about your will. In case something happens." Helen feigned confusion. "Oh, darling, something is going to happen. But you won't like it." She didn't say another word, but she did reach for her nurse call button. "Nurse, I'd like to speak to my lawyer. Oh, and bring Muffin some chicken, please." The Cartwrights looked stunned. "And Helen?" He grinned. The game had begun. Helen may have been old, but she wasn't naive. She'd seen enough courtroom dramas and real-life betrayals to know what vultures looked like. And her children were circling her like she was a Thanksgiving turkey with a weak heart. So she decided to conduct her own little test. Muffin, who had never liked Cheryl's perfume or Dennis's loud voice, became the perfect litmus test. The next Sunday, Helen invited them over for brunch. A spread was laid out: mini quiches, fresh-baked scones, a fruit salad, and a little bowl of grilled chicken for Muffin. As Cheryl entered, Muffin barked. As Dennis sat down, Muffin growled. As Jason dropped his phone on the table and muttered, "Where's the Wi-Fi?" Muffin jumped down and peed directly on his expensive sneakers. "Oh dear," Helen said sweetly. "Muffin's never behaved like this. Maybe she smells something off." "Your dog has issues, Mom," Cheryl hissed. "No," Helen replied. "My dog has instincts." It got worse. When Dennis tried to open Helen's medicine drawer looking for aspirin, Muffin launched into a full-on bark fest. Jason tried to touch one of George's old watches. Muffin growled like she'd seen a ghost. Later that night, Helen poured herself a glass of red wine, scratched Muffin's ears and whispered, "Good girl. Let's make it official." She picked up her phone and called her lawyer. "I need to update my will," she said, "and I'd like to add a clause for Muffin." The very next week, Helen organized what she called a family legacy luncheon. She sent formal invitations, calligraphy on ivory cardstock, sealed with red wax, no less. Cheryl thought it was ridiculous. Dennis thought it was a trap. Jason didn't think at all. They all came anyway. Of course they did. The dining room table was set with the finest china, George's silver cutlery, and a floral centerpiece large enough to hide a poker face behind. Muffin had a plush velvet seat at the head of the table beside Helen. Naturally, as soon as dessert was served, carrot cake with gold flakes, Helen clinked her glass. "I have news," she said. "I've updated my will." The room fell so silent, you could hear Jason's phone buzzing in his pocket. Cheryl almost choked on her cake. "Mom, are you feeling okay?" "Never better," Helen said. "Which is why I thought I should take care of things while I'm fully in control of my faculties." Dennis cleared his throat. "And what changes did you make?" Helen took a slow sip of tea. "Well, let's just say, priorities shift with age. I've started thinking about who's really been there for me, who shows unconditional loyalty, who doesn't fake affection for financial gain." Jason muttered, "She's talking about the dog." Helen raised an eyebrow. "Muffin has sat by my side through illness, loneliness, and boredom. She's never asked for anything except belly rubs. That's more than I can say for some people." There was an audible gasp. Cheryl slammed her napkin on the table. "This is outrageous. That dog can't even sign a check." Helen smiled. "No, but her trustee can." Muffin barked once as if on cue. Helen's lawyer, Mr. Grady, stepped out from the sitting room with a stack of papers. "Hello, everyone. Lovely gathering. Shall we review the updated terms?" Dennis turned pale. Cheryl started whispering furiously to Jason. But Helen, she leaned back in her chair, basking in the chaos. "More carrot cake, anyone?" Helen had always been sharper than the tip of her knitting needles, but now she needed her family to think she was losing it, just enough to get sloppy. She started small. "Jason, dear," she said sweetly one afternoon, "can you help me remember my Netflix password? I think I typed Butter Toast 1, but it might have been Muffin Queen 2020. Jason rolled his eyes. "Grandma, just write it down or use Face ID." "I tried, but the phone keeps saying I'm not me." Cheryl offered to take care of her finances while she rested more. Dennis started poking around in drawers again. Jason kept asking if she'd heard about NFT investing. Perfect. She started forgetting important things. Left the oven on, but not really, she had the switch rigged. Misplaced her pearls, taped under the dog's bed. Asked the same question 3 times in an hour. Muffin, of course, played along. One night she asked Jason, "Where am I again?" He didn't hesitate. "Your will, Grandma. We were talking about your will." Caught red-handed. That night, Helen scribbled in her notebook. "They'll walk right into it. Keep acting clueless." Muffin knows the cue words. Will, money, inheritance. Good girl. Muffin barked from the foot of the bed. Helen tossed her a liver treat and whispered, "We're just getting started." Helen had a burner phone. No one knew about it, not even Muffin, who was too busy gnawing on a beef-scented plush duck to care. From the safety of her recliner and with her bifocals perched precariously on her nose, Helen watched the Cartwright family implode in real time, thanks to a little something called Cartwright Legacy WhatsApp group. This group chat was originally set up by Greg, Helen's grandson, under the pretense of staying connected. But by the second week, it had turned into a virtual war room where the grandkids plotted, the daughters-in-law gossiped, and the sons lobbied for power. Helen only knew about it because she'd found Greg's old iPad when he left it behind during one of his rare, guilt-laden visits. It hadn't been password protected. Amateurs. So Helen added herself to the group chat under the name Legacy Planner 56, with a stock photo of a scale and gavel as her profile picture. They assumed she was some estate lawyer that Uncle Phil had brought in. The messages poured in. "Greg, I swear if Aunt Lisa gets the lake house I'm going to lose it. Dad deserves that place. We always went there for 4th of July. Maura, Lisa's daughter. Your dad deserves nothing. Grandma literally raised us while your dad was in Debtors Anonymous. Trevor, Greg's younger brother. Can we all just agree the dog doesn't need a trust fund? Like, this isn't Succession. Maura, you're just mad Muffin likes me more. Greg, you bribed her with cheese, Maura. I saw it. Aunt Lisa, children enough. This is not how Grandma raised us." Helen, as Legacy Planner 56, inheritance decisions are being actively reviewed. Family behavior will be noted. Instant panic. Greg, wait, what? Are they watching this? Trevor, who is this? Phil's guy? The lawyer. Lisa, it's a lawyer. Stay calm. Just don't say anything more until we know what they've seen. Too late, Lisa. Helen chuckled so hard Muffin barked. She typed with wicked delight. Legacy Planner 56. Please proceed. Observations are ongoing. They shut up for 2 hours straight. That group chat became her personal comedy show. She read every fight, every shady emoji, every attempt at sucking up to her imaginary lawyer. When Helen needed entertainment, she just stirred the pot. Possible revision to Clause 17. Emotional loyalty over bloodline entitlement. All hell would break loose. Greg, what the hell is Clause 17? Mara, OMG, she's giving everything to Muffin, isn't she? Trevor, I'm moving to Canada. And Helen, she just sipped her chamomile and rubbed Muffin's belly. The trap was nearly set. Now it was time to invite them all back to the house. Sunday dinners at the Cartwright estate used to be full of warmth, roasted chicken, and polite laughter. Not anymore. Now they were a battlefield, an arena of passive-aggressive jabs, competitive casserole offerings, and not-so-subtle attempts at winning Helen's favor. This Sunday, Helen prepared a feast with extra flair. Roast lamb, glazed carrots, mashed potatoes with roasted garlic, cornbread, and her famous pecan pie. It was enough to bring a tear to any Southern woman's eye, and a greed-fueled twitch to her children's. They all came. Jason brought a $30 bottle of wine and a phony smile. Mom, you've really outdone yourself. I was just thinking about what a big house this is for one person. Might be time to consider options. Tracy, his wife, cooed from the other side of the table. A condo in Florida maybe? Or even assisted living. Some are like 5-star hotels. Natalie arrived late with her teenager, Skylar, who immediately asked if they had Wi-Fi and then proceeded to eat dinner with her earbuds in. Natalie brought Helen a lavender-scented candle and a speech about aromatherapy being good for seniors. You light this, Mom, Natalie said, and you'll sleep better. Maybe even long enough to wake up refreshed enough to consider that living trust paperwork I emailed you. Helen smiled sweetly, tucking a napkin into Muffin's collar. Thank you, dear. Lavender is lovely. Muffin hates it though. Don't you, sweetie? Skylar looked up from their phone. You feeding the dog at the table again? Muffin's family, Helen said flatly. She gets a seat. The tension was as thick as her gravy. Midway through dinner, Helen stood to make a toast. Everyone raised their glasses, waiting for the traditional heartfelt gratitude. But Helen had something else in mind. To family, she said, smiling through her teeth. To loyalty, honesty, and being remembered for who we really are when the time comes. Cheers. Everyone clinked glasses uneasily. Jason cleared his throat. So, about your will. Oh, not during dinner, dear. Helen cut him off sweetly. It's already taken care of. That shut them up faster than a tax audit. After dinner, they hovered in the kitchen, helping clean up in the hopes of catching Helen alone. She acted confused, mixed up forks with knives, forgot names, and giggled when Muffin accidentally spilled a full glass of Merlot onto Natalie's designer purse. Oh my, Helen said with a hand to her cheek. My brain must be going. But her eyes twinkled. Back in her room later that night, she scribbled in her little notebook. Jason tried to slip me a brochure for a senior facility, file under pressure tactics. Natalie's candle was likely a bribe. Muffin barked every time they spoke. Good girl. Must bake her extra biscuits. The Cartwright children didn't know it, but they were being tested. Sunday dinner wasn't a family gathering anymore. It was the audition of their lives. It started on a lazy Wednesday afternoon when Helen called Cindy, pretending to be rattled and confused. Oh, sweetie, she said, her voice quivering like an old cassette tape. I was looking for my knitting needles and found something strange. It's a will. My handwriting. But I don't remember writing it. Cindy, always on high alert for inheritance news, nearly dropped her oat milk latte. What? Where? In the junk drawer under the takeout menus, Helen replied innocently. It says everything goes to Muffin. The dog. My Muffin. Pause. A long one. Helen could practically hear the gears grinding in Cindy's head. Mom, that's obviously a mistake, Cindy said, her tone now a mix of panic and forced patience. You're old. Maybe you wrote it as a joke. Oh dear, Helen muttered. What if a lawyer sees it and thinks I meant it? You know how official these things can look. The bait was set. That night, Cindy messaged Darren and Becky. The group chat ignited again, this time fueled by digital paranoia. Cindy, guys. Mom thinks she wrote a will giving everything to Muffin. Not joking. So she found it in the junk drawer. Becky, you're kidding. This is because of the fake birthday party, isn't it? Darren, that damn dog. I told you he was a problem. Cindy, we need to act fast. Before she files anything with a lawyer. Becky, we need to take her to her lawyer. Guide the process. Make sure she's clear-headed. Helen chuckled softly to herself as she read the incoming flood of panic messages on her burner iPad. Muffin, resting at her feet, twitched in his sleep, perhaps dreaming of the luxurious velvet dog bed he'd soon inherit. 2 days later, Helen arranged an urgent legal meeting. The kids didn't know the man waiting in the parlor with leather shoes and a battered briefcase was not, in fact, a real lawyer. He was her old bridge partner, Lionel, a retired community theater actor with a flair for Shakespearean dramatics. Lionel, darling, she had said, I need you to play the role of a lifetime. You're now Mortimer Pendleton SQ, estate attorney extraordinaire. British accent optional. When the family arrived, they found Helen seated beside Lionel, who stood and gave a theatrical bow. Pleasure to meet the illustrious Cartwright heirs, he said with a pompous air. Mrs. Cartwright has asked me to look into a recently discovered document. Highly unorthodox, but fascinating. Cindy tried to control her facial muscles. Darren failed. Helen handed Lionel the crumpled muffin will, lovingly printed on yellowing notebook paper in her exaggerated cursive, as he cleared his throat and read. To whom it may concern, I, Helen Cartwright, being of sound mind, leave my entire estate, house, savings, vintage wine collection and antique teacups, to Muffin, my beloved companion, because at least he doesn't pretend to love me just for the money. Silence. Then Lionel slowly looked up, peering over imaginary spectacles. Legal precedent does permit pets to be designated beneficiaries under certain trust structures, he said, enunciating each syllable like a BBC narrator. If filed, this would likely hold up in probate. Cindy gasped. Becky turned white. Darren asked, wait, is that even real? Mortimer tilted his head. As real as love. Or betrayal. The family scrambled. Overnight, Helen received an onslaught of flowers, foot massages, hand-drawn cards, and home-cooked meals that suspiciously resembled supermarket frozen dinners. Becky offered to repaint the deck. Darren walked Muffin every morning at 7 a.m., muttering under his breath while the dog ignored him. Cindy brought over gluten-free cookies and 3 books on brain health. They tried everything short of installing a home surveillance system. But Helen wasn't done yet. She let Muffin accidentally pee on the lawyer decoy's shoes during their next meeting. Lionel gave a heroic monologue about loyalty being thicker than blood, and dramatically stormed out. At this point, the Cartwright siblings were begging Helen to make an appointment with a real lawyer, their lawyer, to ensure her true wishes were honored. She nodded agreeably, patting Muffin. Yes, yes, of course. Anything to make my children feel loved and secure. Meanwhile, she texted her real attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Celeste Wu, and said, we go live next week. Include the trust clause for Muffin. And the payout terms. Let's cause fireworks. The front lawn of Helen Cartwright's modest home had never seen so much activity. Not even during the Christmas light wars of 2007. But this time, the blinking lights and fake snow were replaced by satellite vans, boom mics, and news anchors with suspiciously white teeth. Helen sat comfortably in her favorite lawn chair, Muffin perched beside her on a plush cushion, wearing a tiny bow tie. The banner from Channel 9's Heartland Highlights read, Local grandma leaves fortune to dog, family furious. I told them it was for charity, Helen said sweetly to the young reporter holding a microphone. And what's more charitable than a loyal dog who never asks for anything? Inside the house, her children, Karen, Blake, and the perpetually scowling Tanya, watched from the blinds, horrified. She's humiliating us, Tanya shrieked. She's senile, clearly, Karen hissed. Why is the media even giving her airtime? She's playing you, Blake muttered, starting to catch on. This is her revenge. The family didn't know Helen had submitted the story herself, complete with staged photos, fabricated quotes from a legal advisor, and a heartwarming angle about Muffin rescuing her from depression. The story aired that night, went viral by morning, and by lunchtime Muffin had an agent. That's when things went nuclear. Karen's employer, a real estate firm priding itself on discretion, called her in. "Is this your mother on TV claiming you tried to sedate her for her will?" Blake's local campaign for city council imploded as memes of Helen holding Muffin under the headline, "Trust me, he's more human than them," flooded social media. Tanya's blog, Mindful Mama Tanya, got review bombed with comments like, "This you?" Insert photo of Tanya calling Helen a burden. Helen, meanwhile, sipped her tea and waited. This was just phase 2. Next, she'd leak the family group chat. But not yet. Timing was everything. Helen waited until the buzz died down just enough. Not gone, but simmering. The perfect moment to throw a gallon of gasoline on the fire. She scheduled a live stream. She called it, "The Final Reading of My Will, Truth, Tea and Treats for Muffin." The stream link went viral within hours. Reddit threads lit up. The family predictably panicked. "What do you mean she's going live?" Karen shrieked, pacing her kitchen, her Bluetooth headset bouncing against her jaw. "Can't we stop her?" Tanya asked, clutching her iPad like a life preserver. "She's within her rights," Blake muttered, pulling up the stream on his phone. "And we're about to be dragged." The screen lit up with Helen, elegant in a shawl, Muffin on a velvet cushion beside her. "Hello, darlings," she began, sipping a martini. "You may be wondering why I've invited you here. Well, I haven't. You're just watching like the rest of the world." She laid out the story. Each betrayal, each manipulation, every backhanded compliment, ignored birthday and passive-aggressive holiday dinner. Then she held up her original will. "I was going to give it all to them," she said, "until they showed me exactly who they are." She tore the will in half, on camera. Then she unveiled the new one, framed, signed, legally filed. "To Muffin, the most loyal soul in this house, I leave the estate. To the charities he supports, animal rescue, senior therapy dogs, veterans emotional support, I leave the financial assets." The chat exploded. Thousands of viewers. Comments like, "This is how you go out. She's the petty queen I aspire to be. Muffin 2024. But Helen wasn't done. "Now let's take some calls," she chirped. A moderator piped in. "First caller, Karen. You're live." Karen's voice came through. "Mother, please. This has gone far enough." Helen smirked. "Oh, sweetie, we're just getting started." Next caller, Tanya. Then Blake. Each one tried to spin their version. Each one was met with receipts, screenshots, voicemail recordings, even a therapist's note with permission. Helen had it all. By the end, the siblings looked like tabloid villains. Muffin had more fan art than some Netflix characters. Helen ended the stream with a wink. "Like, share and subscribe. Oh, and be kind to your elders. You never know who's recording." The day after the live stream, Helen's voicemail had more messages than Christmas cards in 1983. The bulk? Lawyers. Some offering help, others threatening lawsuits. Blake's attorney issued a cease and desist. Tanya's lawyer accused Helen of emotional sabotage and defamation. Karen threatened to contest the will on grounds of diminished capacity. Helen's reply was simple. She forwarded every threat to her own legal pit bull, Sylvia Garza, an 81-year-old estate lawyer who once sued a country club for banning widows from Thursday golf and won. "They're bluffing," Sylvia said over the phone, crunching a Werther's. "They can challenge the will, but it's ironclad. You made sure of that." "And the dog clause?" Helen asked. "Perfectly legal," Sylvia assured her. "People leave money to pigeons. Muffin's practically a monk compared to some beneficiaries I've seen." Karen, Blake, and Tanya assembled their own team. 3 lawyers, 1 PR fixer, and a TikTok influencer to help with image rehab. They prepared for war. Helen, she sent Muffin to obedience school. It felt symbolic. While Helen enjoyed rising status as America's grandma, her kids became villains on the internet. A Reddit thread titled r/Justice for Muffin trended with over 40,000 upvotes. Users unearthed Karen's past HOA complaints,
Blake's campaign donations from shady developers, and Tanya's anti-vax tweets. Someone even started selling Muffin for President merch. Karen lost a major client. Blake dropped out of the city council race. Tanya's sponsor dropped her mommy blog. Call her. Karen barked at Tanya during a family Zoom meltdown. Apologize. Cry if you have to. Tanya, usually the toughest, blinked back tears. What if she doesn't forgive us? She won't, Blake muttered. Helen, meanwhile, posted a photo of Muffin wearing tiny reading glasses, a pole resting on a mini legal pad. Caption: reviewing estate tax options. The internet loved her. Cornered and cancelled, the Cartwright kids held a press conference. Not because they wanted to, but because Karen's PR agent said, "It's this or a Netflix docuseries where you're the villains." They stood behind a podium, looking like children forced to apologize for stealing cookies. "We regret our behavior," Blake began, voice flat. Tanya sniffled on cue. "We love our mother." Karen, ever the politician, tried to pivot. "We hope to heal privately as a family." Just then, a helicopter flew overhead trailing a banner. Muffin 2028, the only loyal family member. Helen had hired it. Just for flair. Reporters laughed. The crowd applauded. The children walked off stage in shame. Weeks earlier, Helen had installed a nanny cam in her living room for safety. What she captured was a goldmine. One night, the three kids had shown up unexpectedly. Helen, pretending to be asleep, recorded every word. "Karen, she'll croak soon. Let's just keep playing nice till then. Blake, I say we get her into a care home. Fast. Tanya, we should have pushed harder to get that will rewritten." Helen had held on to the footage until now. She uploaded it to her blog titled, "Why I Left Everything to My Dog." The video went viral within hours. Even those who once pitied her kids turned. Sponsors pulled out, job offers vanished, and the hashtag Team Helen trended globally. Helen didn't gloat. He didn't need to. Muffin's new dog food line launched that day, and sold out in 4 minutes. Helen, ever the dramatic orchestrator, decided to host a brunch. It was billed as a peace offering. Handwritten invitations were sent with flowery cursive and a scent of lavender. So Helen. The title, A Morning of Closure and Cinnamon Rolls. The Cartwrights showed up in full passive-aggressive force. Vicky brought mimosa mix. Todd wore a tight polo and that fake smile he thought fooled everyone. Natalie wore her influencer best and live-streamed half of the arrival. Helen played the perfect hostess. She kissed cheeks, passed blueberry scones, and gave Muffin a new little bow tie. Once seated, she opened with, "Family is like brunch. Sticky, sweet, and sometimes gives you heartburn." Everyone fake laughed. Then she dropped a new will on the table. Vicky blinked. "Another one?" Helen smiled. "This one divides everything equally. But only if everyone signs a public apology for the first will dispute." Live on Muffin's TikTok. Silence. "You're joking," Tot scoffed. "Muffin doesn't joke." She motioned to the dog, who barked on cue. Natalie glanced at her livestream viewers. Comments flooded in. "Sign it, you leeches. Muffin for president." Needless to say, no one signed. Helen folded the new will, dabbed her mouth with a napkin, and said, "Brunch over." The brunch video hit 4 million views in 2 days. Hashtag Team Muffin trended. Merch started popping up. "I bark for justice" mugs, "Muffin over money" t-shirts. Natalie tried spinning the scandal into clout. She made a crying apology video. It backfired. Todd got fired from his job at the bank. Too many memes of him photoshopped begging Muffin for cash. Vicky joined a support group for disinherited adult children. They had a Facebook group called Willed Out Warriors. Meanwhile, Helen got her own column in a senior lifestyle magazine, Petty with Purpose. Her first column? How to Weaponize a Yorkshire Terrier. All jokes aside, Helen did eventually get a real lawyer. Enter Doris Chin, a 72-year-old estate attorney with an eye for detail and a closet full of vintage Dior. Doris wasn't here to play. "Helen, legally speaking, this is the most beautiful chaos I've ever seen." They went through all versions of the will. Everything checked out, signed, witnessed, and notarized. The dog was now the sole heir. Wiggly. Doris smiled. "Muffin needs a financial guardian, though." Might I suggest, you? Helen nodded. Muffin and I share everything, even snacks. The judge later approved the setup in court. The Cartwrights tried to contest, but it was hard to win when you publicly mocked the person in question, threatened the dog on social media, and live-streamed your own greed. The court sided with Helen and Muffin. A year later, Helen was invited to a Senior Influencer Awards night. Her category, Iconic Internet Grandparent of the Year. She won. Muffin wore a tuxedo harness. Helen's speech, "To everyone who doubted me, my age, my memory, my pet, I dedicate this to you. Because you taught me the sweetest revenge is served on silver kibble trays." Standing ovation. The camera panned to the Cartwrights in the audience. Vicky was mid-eye roll. Todd looked like he swallowed a lemon. Natalie was live tweeting about how unfair it all was. Helen lifted Muffin. He barked twice. Fade out to roaring applause, and a soft piano remix of Who Let the Dogs Out. The Cartwrights, humiliated and desperate, tried to fight back. Not with humility, of course, but with lawyers. They hired a sleazy attorney named Lou Trenton who proudly boasted on his website, "I don't get paid to be nice, I get paid to win." Helen's response? She sent Muffin into the room first during the deposition. Muffin promptly peed on Lou's leather briefcase. The legal battle was doomed from the start. Helen had records, videos, statements. Even Muffin's vet signed a statement declaring the dog showed more loyalty and intelligence than the entire Cartwright bloodline combined. By the end of the week, Lou Trenton quit the case. Helen sent the Cartwrights a fruit basket with a note that read, "Maybe you'll do better in your next lives. Love, Helen and Muffin." Thanks to Muffin's loyal companionship and Helen's savage wit, the pair were invited to speak at National Dog Day in Central Park. Helen wore a black dress with sequined paw prints. Muffin wore a diamond-studded collar and sat on a throne made of crushed estate paperwork. Thousands showed up. Reporters asked, "Is it true you left everything to the dog?" Helen smiled sweetly. Of course, he's the only one who didn't ask for it. By evening, Helen had a book deal, a podcast, and her own advice column in the New York Times. It was called Ask Helen and Muffin. In a final desperate move, the Cartwrights attempted to have Helen declared mentally unfit. They hired a shady psychiatrist who wore sunglasses indoors and charged $600 an hour. Helen welcomed the evaluation. She served the psychiatrist herbal tea made from her garden, played a Mozart sonata on the piano, and recited Shakespeare with Muffin barking on cue. The psychiatrist left after 20 minutes and submitted a report stating, "Ms. Helen Cartwright is of sound mind, sharp wit, and superior intelligence. Also, her dog might be psychic." The Cartwrights lost the case. The final will was read in the same grand dining room where the family once insulted Helen's casserole. Muffin sat at the head of the table wearing a velvet bow tie. Helen cleared her throat. "To my dearest family, I leave you this wisdom. Greed rots from the inside. Muffin gets the estate. The rest of you, you get a life lesson." Gasps, tears, and a fainting cousin. Helen passed around mini quiches and added, "Oh, and Muffin has generously decided to let you rent the guest house. Market price, of course." Everyone was too stunned to speak. Helen poured herself a mimosa. "Like, share, and subscribe," she said to the hidden camera crew filming it all for her new reality series, Pause and Revenge.